Those are usually pretty good.
You know, that's one of those things that you probably.
Call to order this regular meeting of the Miami Special Utility Authority for Tuesday, May 20th at 5:30 p.m. I see Phil out there anywhere?
Yeah, he's out there.
Okay, Phil, would you say the blessing, please?
Father, we thank you today for your goodness, your kindness, your mercy, your love. We thank you for these leaders and all the servants that serve the community here. And we ask God to give us wisdom, give us a great measure of grace and peace to do your work here. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Please join me in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Item number 4 is public input and unscheduled personal appearances. Is there anyone in the audience that wants to speak to the authority about any of the agenda items if you're not already listed on the agenda? There being none, item 5 is a consent agenda. Staff is recommending items 6 and 7, which are the minutes and the claims. Any questions? If not, I'd entertain a motion.
Mayor, I make a motion to approve items 6 and 7 in the consent agenda.
And a second, please.
I'll second.
Poll.
Johnson.
Aye.
Weston.
Aye.
McLean.
Aye.
Sharbit.
Aye.
Schultz.
Aye. Item number 8, request for special dispensation beyond approved policies on utility bill charges, on utility bill for sanitation charges by citizen Kara Brock, 107 South Main. Kara, come up, please.
Yeah, back in February is when I first noticed I was being charged 2 sanitations on my bill each month
Okay.
for this. And I believe, and so I went back and I asked why, and they said, do you have 2 containers? I said, no, I only have 1. And it's like, so I started researching and it went back to August of 2010. And at that, I know how it ended up that way after thinking about it. Highland was, I didn't have no container apparently when I first opened the shop in 2001. I thought like most residents, you get utilities and they end up providing you with the container. No, I wasn't brought one, so you know I assumed all them big containers was city property, and I did not know that. No. Highland was letting me put my trash in there for up to 9 years. And when Highland was selling out and moving, you know, location, he's like, I'm gonna leave this dumpster here for you, Karen. And I was like, oh, that's not city dumpster? And he's like, no, ma'am, I had to buy that. And I was like, oh. And I was thinking, well, I wouldn't need no big dumpster like that. But as soon as he left, somebody came and took his dumpster anyways. So at that point, I called and said I had no container whatsoever. And yes, I was staying somewhat in that apartment next door. And so they brought me one, and at that point, I'm assuming that's when they added an additional sanitation on my bill. And it's up to 47 months, up to $499.40.
We're not talking about a polycart. We're talking about a big dumpster. Great.
I'm talking about all I have is a polycart from that point.
Okay.
Yes.
You're talking about a polycart.
Yes. Yeah. Now I thought the big dumpsters were city dumpsters, since when I started there and I was charged of sanitation for, you know, the first 9 years without nothing. I was like, I asked Highland, I was like, oh, I wonder what I was supposed to be putting my trash in. I had nothing. He's like, I don't know. You know, I was never received one up till I called, you know, when he left. And said, hey, I don't have a container. So I'm assuming they thought I already had one,
right? And
they added an additional one. And you know, and I'll say, and somebody's like, well, you know, maybe you should have brought that to our attention sooner. But I had some health issues the last few years that I've had 3 blood transfusions and, you know, some thyroid conditions, and I just wasn't mentally thinking about checking. And plus, you know, they staple these things up tight after you make your payment to even go back and check.
Jeff, is there a member of staff that can address any of the?
Kevin is here.
Kevin, can you shed any light beyond what?
Oh, yeah,
Ms.
also
Brock has said.
You know, that he was only allowed to go back 2 months and take it away, you know, take the additional one away. I just received my bill today, and, you know, the only thing done on the bill was it just took it off.
One of them was
So-
taken off, correct?
Yeah, right,
Right.
up to this point.
Well, she set service in 2004, which that was, I mean, I have no idea, you know, whether she had a car, didn't have a car,
Right.
I don't know.
I purchased the building in 2002.
Okay, utility records show that she set service in 2004.
Okay.
In 2010, due to utility records, once again, notes on them, on the encode, that we delivered her a second cart in June of 2010. And we-
Oh.
and we
Which you
started-
understood, that was the first cart as far as you understood, right?
I didn't have no cart in June of 2010. I got records, I didn't have no cart at that point.
Okay. Once again.
Going by-
Additional
according to your
one didn't
records,
get
though.
charged
According- right.
Until August of 2010. And I have that here in my
Okay.
bills.
Due to utility records is what I'm going on.
Right, right.
Sorry.
Okay, as of June of 2010, we took her a second cart because she had called and requested a cart, which she already had one, we thought.
Right.
So we took her a second one. And then she paid for 2 carts until May of 2014, which was when she brought it to my attention. I took 1 cart off to where
I
she only
tried to
had 1
call
cart.
there back in February, but they told me they had somebody return my call. It was a woman that was out, I guess, but I never did get a call back at that point either.
I'm not aware of that.
Right.
I'm not gonna say one way or the other.
Somebody was filling in or something.
It could have been.
So, Jeff, what, or Kevin, what is the procedure? What scope of authority do you guys have for adjusting the bill?
I mean, the most we've done is 2 months as
Okay.
far as going backwards. But that is usually because it's our error, which, I mean, maybe this is our error as
Right.
well. But by utility records, we stopped it as soon as it was brought to my attention.
I've gotten bills, I mean, I have all my records from when I first opened the shop, so.
We're not disputing what
Yes,
your
yeah,
bills
but
say,
I'm
ma'am.
just saying, I got papers too to show otherwise, you know.
I don't think he's disputing anything you're saying,
Yeah.
other than nobody, you know, there was not a dumpster there, and that, we were not aware of that. He's just
I mean,
saying what our
isn't-
records show.
Would that not be the procedure as soon as you start utilities and stuff and start getting charged, that they bring you something?
We assume you still have one from the previous tenant.
Oh, no, there
So
wasn't.
that,
Oh,
Jeff, is this before us because we have a policy for electric and water, but we don't have a specific policy for sanitation? Or?
Yes, sir. We don't have policy guidance on this. Staff views these type situations as the same from a technical standpoint as us reaching into the cash drawer and pulling out cash when we give an adjustment on a utility bill. So we have to, unless you've expressly adopted a policy statement on this particular issue, we don't have the authority to provide adjustment. Unless, of course, we find a clear and undisputable evidence that a mistake has been made, and then we can correct it at that point in time. But the request that's before you tonight is beyond staff's ability to handle on our own.
Okay. Deb, did you have a
Well,
question?
I was wondering, ma'am, what did you think you were paying for in your trash for all those years?
like Kylan's always parked it, the big one, like right by my gate thing, you know, so it wouldn't block his entrance. But apparently he had probably made the statement to my brother, who was working there at the time with me, that he was allowing us to put our trash in there. He said, Kara, you know, I was just gonna let you guys do it because, so since it was just right there in between me and him, I was assuming that it was just shared city property in the city.
And you thought that's what you were being charged for?
Yes,
was
yes, a
putting
portion
it-
of what's in there.
Do we have any idea who owned that container? Was it a private business? Does anybody, Kevin, do you have any idea?
I'm
He
assuming
did,
it was Highland.
he said he bought it, but,
Okay.
you know,
Highland Heating and
and
Air
when it
just went out of business.
came up missing, of course, I thought, oh, there ain't no way I needed a big, for hair and cans and stuff.
And so did they,
Somebody came and just took it, and I called Hyman, and I was like, did you come get your dumpster? And he said, no, and I was like, well, somebody just took it in the middle of the night one night.
so when the dumpster was emptied, was that a city service that we provided, or did,
You know,
ma'am,
here's
let
the-
me ask him, ma'am,
I
okay?
had something.
Was that a city service that we provided, was emptying the dumpster? I mean, it may have been his personal property, but we emptied it and charged him some fee
Yes.
for doing that?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead
You
now,
know,
what did,
there's people all the time going down the alleys, I'm sure y'all know, emptying their trucks out. So therefore, yeah, I would assumed it was city, you know, I didn't know that each one is, you know, cause there's always stuff in Highlands trash that somebody pulled up in the middle of the night to empty their stuff out in there.
We're-
And they do it all the time.
yes, ma'am, we're aware of that, and if you observe anyone doing that and you'll record their license plate number, we would be glad to prosecute them for that, but
Right.
we are aware that that's a
I mean,
problem.
So I just thought, you know, it's city, until Highland told me that.
I understand.
Yeah.
Just as a point of information, Mr. Chairman, the new trucks that will be delivered next month have cameras on them, and we will be taking videos of all of the pickups and drop-offs, so we would have a video record in the future of whether or not an individual has a dumpster.
Well, that's good, because they sure do tear up a lot of dumpsters. I went through container after container after container, and of course, none of the ones I was brought was ever in great shape.
Okay.
You know, the wheels coming, you know.
So what is it, can you be very specific about what your request is? I think you said it at the beginning, but it's been a while, can you?
You know, I want to be fair, I mean, this is for almost $500 that I paid for a service that I didn't get. I mean, does that seem fair?
You were getting
And
a
I-
service, you
For
had
one.
a,
For
For-
one container
well,
that never overflowed at all.
but you were
That I was
paying,
able to shut every week.
yes, you were paying for a polycart charge and not a large dumpster charge,
Right.
which is actually cheaper
Well,
for
yeah.
the years that you weren't.
But what, was I supposed to have a big dumpster for a bag of hair?
Which was
I
cheaper,
don't
Doug?
understand what you're
The
really
polycarts.
saying.
Yeah, and we're gonna clarify what he's saying, but I just wanted to be clear.
I
on
just
which
want
was
to point
cheaper.
out, you were getting trash service. There was a misunderstanding that you were supposed to
That
have
I
a
had a
polycart.
second, I'm getting charged for a second container when I only had one container.
How long has that been going on for?
That's the 4 years she's
4
talking about.
years.
The first, since whether it be '02 or '04, she was using Highlands dumpster. She was getting
For 9
the service
years.
of having the trash hauled off, and so that's, she's
I
not
had
disputing
I
that.
did not realize I had no dumpster for not the first 9 years.
But you acknowledge that the trash was hauled away, correct?
Right,
Whatever
so I
receptacle it
figure
went
I
into.
get-
Okay,
but-
so we're not disputing that.
Right.
I'm just trying to be clear. We're
I'm
not
just
disputing
getting
that.
charged for
The-
whatever
the-
portion
the-
I was throwing in.
Okay,
That's
so the
what I was
que,
assuming.
the,
So I'm not even, you know, questioning that.
Okay,
even though
may I
did
finish,
not have
please?
nothing.
the matter that's in dispute is whether or not for the last approximately 4 years, you should have been charged for a second cart.
Correct.
That's what we're being asked to decide. Do you agree with that?
Yes.
Okay, all right. Do you have any questions, Joe?
No, I don't have any questions other than, as far as what Jeff or David might say, if there wasn't a second card, is it possible to put that amount of credit towards her utilities until it's used up? The amount that she's talking about. If in fact she didn't have a second card, and we charged her for a second card, there was just a misunderstanding or mistake.
I mean, the previous tenant could have hauled the cart off for all we know.
Right.
I think there wasn't another cart there, and she was using the Highlands.
And that's the thing, I knew who the previous tenants was, and I don't remember them having one back there.
Christy, did you have any questions or comments?
No, I was thinking the same thing Joe was
Yes.
just said.
If we agree with this amount, that we would provide that in the form of a credit to her bill, is that?
Yeah, for
what you're
the
suggesting,
charges
Jeff?
of the second cart
The
that she
second
didn't.
container.
Neil?
I'll have to abstain there.
Okay. Can you give me the amount once more, please?
$499.40. Would you like this piece of paper that I?
No, ma'am. Thank you. And what is your average bill? Do you know that? your average utility bill? And are you suggesting a credit against all of her utilities?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So it would maybe take a month or 2 or 3?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, like this month, it looked like it was running about, see, 189, and there's like 2 meters on the building, and,
So what it looks like is if it's around $190, if we agree to provide you a credit in the amount of $499.40, that it would take about 3 months for you to be even. Would you be satisfied
yes,
with
sir.
that?
Yes,
Okay.
sir.
Okay.
Even if it took 3 years, as long as, even if you took that, just that whatever monthly, yeah, I'd be satisfied, yes.
Okay. Do we have a motion?
She's
Go ahead.
saying it's 49, is it 499.04 or
$499.40.
and 40 cents? Okay. I'll make a motion.
It's 4 cents.
Okay. Do we have a second?
I'll second. For what amount?
Okay. Do you have a different amount?
Yes, by
What?
36 cents. We have 499.04.
I would do the
Okay.
499.40
Okay.
motion.
So we have a motion to provide Ms. Brock with a credit on her utility bill for $499.40 until that's used up, and we have a second.
Yep.
Roll call, please.
Charbit,
Aye.
McLean,
Aye.
Weston,
Aye.
Johnson,
Abstain.
Schultz.
Aye. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Item number 9, request for special dispensation beyond approved policies on utility bill for partial sanitation charges for citizen Brenda Longan, 116 North Main. Hi, Brenda.
Hello. Okay. I'm really here just trying to have something explained to me. So, in 2011, I leased 2 pieces of property. One on First Avenue Northeast and one on Main Street. When I received my first utility bill, I noticed that my sanitation for the property on First Avenue was $17.51. My sanitation for 116 North Main was $60.06. So I called and asked, I thought based on square footage, occupancy maybe, no real, what I was told was if you have an address and you're using utilities, you will pay sanitation fees, which I, of course, didn't argue that then, and I'm not arguing that now. I just was disputing the difference in the amount. Well, they would get back with me. Time went on, you know, busy, opening a business, yada, yada. Maybe irresponsible on my part. You know, I called again. And they would have to check it out. Might take a few days, but someone would get back with me. No return of phone call again. So time went on again. And it went up, which that's okay, I understand, you know, things have to increase eventually. So when my last one that I received, it had gone up to like $80 and something, so I
And
just-
how much was the other one? The other one went up also, I'm assuming?
Well, I stopped leasing that property in
Okay.
April, but it had gone up throughout the 3 years I had it a couple of times, a couple of dollars a month. So I thought, you know what, I need to figure, so I called my building manager, Keith Mannion, very nice man, and he said, well, you should just be using our dumpster. And I said, well, it's what I've been doing, and I've been paying the minimal charge, because I understand, you know, you have to pay something. I mean, you know, gas, labor, all that. But I've really never been given an explanation as to why one piece of property is almost 3 times, a little over 3 times more expensive, you know, than the other.
Do you know if you were paying for a polycart charge or the large dumpster charge? We have a large dumpster at our work, and we get it 5 days a week. So
Mhm.
that ups, you know, the amount that we're charged.
Mhm.
Do you have?
And I understand that, and I was offered, one of the phone calls, one of the girls that worked, I believe her name was Ashley, very sweet girl, very helpful, asked, do you want us to bring you a poly card? And I said, I explained then, we don't need any more trash receptacles in this alley. I'm just saying that I just don't understand why I'm being charged
Two different
over
rates.
3 times for,
Right.
you know, and my property's in the same parking lot. It's the same alley. It's the same, my First Avenue, we were using the same dumpster for both pieces of property, which I'm assuming belongs to Charles Mills, who owns the property, but Keith is my building manager. And I really never, I still don't understand.
So Kevin, can you come up, please? A 2-yard container of a, that's not a poly cart, that's a dumpster or something, or,
Commercial dumpster. the metal-
okay. And is it still there?
Yes, it's hers, she owns it. Or,
The one I own, I chained and put next to my building, which I have a picture of here, the month I called. And Keith said, you shouldn't be providing your own trash receptacle anyway. You're leasing, just use ours. And, would you like to see? I mean, I did, because I thought, okay, well, that makes sense.
It's
And-
never been
And to be
serviced.
fair, it probably was about a couple of months, maybe 3 before I did that, so I can see being charged, the additional charge, because that came into business when I bought it back. So I brought it from the truck route with me, thinking we were supposed to have it. But then I thought, I'm leasing, I didn't buy this building, so. So
Well,
it's been like that since probably November of 2011. So it hasn't been serviced and it's been like out of the way.
the Main Street address has the commercial dumpster. She's being charged for a commercial, was being charged for a commercial dumpster at that one. The First Street address, she was being charged for a commercial poly cart. Is what the difference in the prices is.
What's the commercial polycar? Is that the blue one?
It's the green.
Like a
one.
residential
Yes.
one?
Yes.
Okay. There's not one back there.
There's like 4 different group or addresses sharing one metal dumpster because we don't want the poly carts in that area for it being unsightly, like they used to be behind
right.
other areas. So we've let for not more than 5 businesses group together and use one commercial dumpster and split the cost, which it comes out to be the same dollar-wise as one commercial dumpster price.
Which is the $80.
Yes, the 83.
I have it
So
on.
that's the amount that 5 tenants
Thereabout,
would be
yes.
paying. So the total price is somewhere around 400. Is that for a month? Is that
No,
what
it's the 80 for the month.
Okay.
That's the minimal, the
The
17.
1913
But 19,
Oh.
almost
Is-
$40
Yeah.
times 5
ni-
is,
is, you know,
Which I
thereabout.
just,
It's a little more, but if we don't allow more than 5 to use the dumpster because that's our lowest charge. I mean,
it's 1913 is what
Right.
the charge is. Which is on this month's bill, by the way. It got dropped to 1913 this month, which is fair and I appreciate it very much. But I still kind of feel like
because she
I
got
was
grouped in
overcharged.
with
Right.
the others not having a commercial dumpster on her own for that address.
or I would have had just a small one brought in, but I agree with, you know, having another receptacle in that alley is just unnecessary.
You
so.
had one there that they could have dumped for 2 or 3 months, you said?
I'm gonna say 3 months at the top.
And that's the $80 a month, and that's what you're being charged,
Was being charged.
was being charged.
Up until just this month,
And how many months have you been there?
since 2011.
So,
So I did some math too, if you like me.
okay.
And I took out of my charges, the maximal charge, which was on 116 North Main, I deducted the minimal charge from that, because I know I expect to pay that. And I have it here, but the total amount I feel that I need to be reimbursed or credited, however you want to do it, is $1,762.27.
because she was being charged the $80
Yeah, I think they know.
approximately.
Say that number again.
$1,762.27.
And that's because you've been you were charged the $80, and you should have been charged the $19.95.
Yes, sir.
What you're, except for the 3 or 4 months that
Yes,
you
sir.
thought you didn't have the one that was back there chained up.
Yes, sir. And he was very kind, again, to offer 2 months credit, which I appreciated very much. I thought that was, but I just kind of feel.
Kevin, do you agree with that statement?
That he was kind?
No. I know he won't answer that. Do you agree with what she's saying? I mean,
Yeah, I mean, I don't know when she chained it up. If it was not chained, then we serviced it, whether she put trash in it or she didn't. On her trash day, we serviced her can.
Yeah.
Who did chain it up?
She did.
Me and Ace Hardware.
And you did
And I
that.
put a note on it saying, please no longer service this receptacle. And then when the wind blew the one in the car, I don't know, it's been
And so
several
how long
months.
ago did you chain it up?
I'd say it's
Approximately.
probably November of 2011
Okay.
when I realized that that's where the charge was coming from. And my building manager said, you should just be using ours because you're just leasing. So I was like, okay. So I chained it up so it wouldn't be serviced anymore. Now it's sitting next to my building. Then since then I pushed it across the alley
And
against.
so are your calculations from November of 2011 then?
It is not, they are not. So we would need to adjust that. And I just really thought about that as I was coming this way. I was like, you know what though, I think that they did service that dumpster for 3 or 4 months. And I'm sorry, I'm not trying to be
No. Well, they couldn't have
anyway,
serviced
so-
if it was chained.
before I chained it.
Okay.
So
So,
I'm saying-
so your calculations start from,
November, probably, maybe even December of 2011. So we need to add back
Okay.
the big one. What do you call the big ones?
Commercial.
Yeah,
$60 times 4 or whatever.
yeah,
Take off the 1,700.
yeah. Because in 2011 it was $60.06.
it'd be 15, 22, 27, Joe, if you took $60 times 4 off of that. Any comments, thoughts, questions?
can't think of any.
Any comments from staff? Do we have a motion?
Make a
Make-
motion. Go ahead.
I'll make a motion to approve the amount of 15.22 27 cents.
In the
Did we
form-
want it in form of a credit,
I would say.
in form of utility credit?
Okay. Do we have a second?
Second.
Roll call?
Johnson.
Aye.
Sharbit.
Aye.
Weston.
Aye.
McLean.
Aye.
Schultz.
Aye. Thank you.
Thank you, council members. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Item number 10, consent to Miami Community Facility Authority indebtedness for purchase of scoreboard. Now, have we done this, is this just the paperwork as to form?
Yes, sir. You, in essence, are ratifying your previous decision because you had tentatively approved the indebtedness at a previous meeting. We didn't actually have the loan instrument. We have the loan instrument now. We're bringing it back to you as an abundance of caution.
And David, are you comfortable with the form and the terms and everything accurately reflects everything we've talked about?
I am, Mr. Chairman. I'm very comfortable. The only indebted party would be the MCFA, but because there's an agreement that had to do with financing between the MSUA and the MCFA, I thought it would be appropriate to put the matter on this agenda, also to clarify that no bond proceeds are being used in this obligation.
Thank you, David. My apologies. City Council had tentatively approved it at a previous
Okay.
meeting.
And this in no way creates indebtedness for the city or the SUA?
Correct.
Or the city treasurer?
Correct.
Any other questions? Do we have a motion?
Motion to approve, Mayor.
And a second?
Second.
Roll call?
Johnson.
Aye.
Weston.
Aye.
McLean.
Aye.
Sharbit.
Aye.
Schultz.
Aye. Item 11, other new business, if any. Any new business?
No new business.
Could not have been
Mr. Chairman.
foreseen. Item 12, staff reports. Written reports are in your packet if available, and staff is present for questions if there are any questions. Item number 13, trustee and community announcements. I'm going to take this opportunity to just make the community aware. I think most everyone is that Representative Larry Glenn is retiring. This is his last term. And on Monday, June 2nd, 2014, which is this couple of weeks, there is going to, at 2 p.m. in the Bruce G. Carter Student Union atrium, there is going to be a reception to honor Larry and thank him for his service. I'm going to be at that time presenting a proclamation on behalf of myself and the City Council to Larry, thanking him for his long service. Larry served on the City Commission back when we had the Commission form of government. He's also, of course, served in the Air Force, served with Ottawa County and the Sheriff's Department, and then has served us at the state level. So Larry is a long time public servant. And I know we all appreciate the dedication that he's shown. So just again, at 2 p.m. on Monday, June 2nd at the college, there will be a reception honoring Larry, and would encourage everyone to turn out. Any other announcements?
Nope.
Okay. Future agenda planning? Any items under there, Mr. Bishop?
No, sir.
And a motion to adjourn?
Motion adjourned.
And a second?
Second.
Roll call?
Weston.
Aye.
McLean.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Sharbit.
Aye.
Schultz.
Aye. Okay, we are going to move right into the Miami City Council meeting. We are called to order. Item number 2 on the agenda is public input and unscheduled personal appearances. If there's anyone here tonight that wants to speak to the council on any of the agenda items, if you're not already listed specifically, then please come forward. There being none, item number 3 is public hearing on proposed FY 2014-2015 budget. Public hearing is called for any member of the public to present to the governing body comments, recommendations, or information on any part of the proposed budget. Is there anyone in the audience that wants to comment on the proposed budget? And David, is this a hearing that we need to formally open and close?
You effectively just did, Your Honor.
Okay. Item number 15, resolution regarding the City of Miami, Oklahoma budget for fiscal year 2014-2015 and establishing budget amendment authority. Mr. Bishop.
Thank you, Your Honor. The item that is before you at this time, since you've concluded the public hearing on the proposed fiscal year 2014-2015 budget, is to approve a resolution that we must submit to the State Auditor's Office before the start of our fiscal year. It must be approved no later than 7 days before the beginning of that fiscal year, which at present is July the 1st of 2014. Normally at this point in time, I usually read the budget message just to memorialize the concepts of the budget and the highlights of the budget, and would do so at this time with your permission. To the Honorable Mayor and members of the City Council and citizens of the City of Miami, for almost 3 decades I have been preparing budgets of some form or fashion. During those years it was common for me to name the budget or ascribe some type of theme for the budget. Contained herein is my 3rd budget for the City of Miami. This year being no different, we are identifying this year's theme as All Caught Up. And while there's plenty left to do in Miami, we have reached a level of completion and restoration that deserves mention and reflection. When I was hired by the council in 2012, the municipal organization had many unique challenges. The city, in essence, was under siege by both outside and internal forces. Of particular concern was both litigation from citizen groups and former employees. In essence, the city's administrative capacity was strained, as it was also subjected to a special audit from the Oklahoma State Auditor's Office. This audit, initiated by citizen petition, was targeted at many of the business practices of the organization and alleged improprieties. But these were not the only challenges facing the city. The city was in a financial conundrum with declining revenues and an erosion of fund balance in the city's major funds. Deficits were also building within the city's self-insured health plan and its self-funded retirement program. Since completion of my first budget with the City of Miami, we as an organization have processed and worked through most of these issues. The remaining issues have digressed to a manageable point. Specifically, all but one lawsuit with former employees has been resolved. The citizen-initiated Ketam suit has been assigned to another jurisdiction for consideration, and at issue is whether or not the statute of limitations is expired. Regardless, the prognosis for the city is positive. Each major subject outlined in the state special audit have been corrected or addressed. The city has new guidelines for procurement of capital improvements that have resulted in 3 cycles of error-free contracting. The city's street improvement program, funded by a voter-approved 65.65 cent sales tax, will successfully come to a close at the end of this fiscal year. The city has successfully completed a number of other capital projects without complication. This includes the $8.8 million Red Robinson Event Center project, which has been developed using the construction manager at risk process and with the assistance of the long-range planning department at Oklahoma State University. To date, this project has progressed within budget and without serious imposition to either Northeastern Oklahoma A&M College or the Miami Public School District. Once completed this fall, the facility will not only represent a fine example of cooperative spirit in Miami, it will also leave an undeniable impact on the city's skyline. This budget also represents the second budget to see real growth in the city's major fund balances. The fiscal year 2012-2013 budget projected ending fund balances in the city's main funds of approximately $6 million. But this year's fund balances have risen to slightly over $11 million by the third quarter, resulting in an 84% increase in financial reserves. The projected beginning fund balance for those same funds in the fiscal year 2014-2015 budget, however, is just slightly over $10 million. The decline between the third quarter's ending fund balances and the beginning fund balances for the fiscal year 2014-2015 budget, while appearing significant, also represent a major improvement for the city's financial well-being. By the third quarter of fiscal year 2013-2014, the deficit in the city's self-funded health plan had almost approached $1 million. The overall increase in the city's reserves has allowed for a transfer to alleviate the deficit in its entirety, while still protecting a respectable investment base for the city. This year's budget reflects the first time that fund will begin the year with a positive fund balance. And that's in the history of that fund. We've verified that all the way back to 2002. As for reserves, this past year, the City Council, by ordinance, officially created 3 reserve accounts, and those accounts will total over $6 million in the fiscal year 2014-2015 budget. Half of those funds are set aside for major infrastructure failure, and the third is designed to offset major revenue shortfall. History has shown us in Miami that disaster is unfortunately just around the corner. Lessons learned from the 2007 Miami flood and the 2011 Joplin tornado disasters is that the city's revenues could suffer a major and unforeseen disruption, second only to the harsh impact it would have on our affected families. The special audit also targeted the city's self-funded retirement system. Before completion of the audit, however, the city successfully merged the pension program into the Oklahoma Municipal Retirement Fund, OMRF. This transfer not only provided the employees with a better plan, it successfully transferred liability for investment performance from individual council members to the trust officers at OMRF. That liability created a conservative approach to investing the reserve funds for the pension. As a result, low yields produced by so-called safe investments were not keeping pace with actuarial prescription. The plan to become underfunded. While the plan remains underfunded, it has experienced improvement since the transfer. Investments in the pension fund in the previous year produced only a 1% return on investment. This past year, the plan realized a return on investment of slightly under 9%. The resulting effect was a lower than normal increase in the amount of supplemental funding required to support the plan. The attached budget also provides more funding for capital improvements. For the past few years, the budget has provided for $500,000 to be transferred to the Street and Alley Fund. This year's budget continues that trend, but increases the amount transferred to $1 million per annum. At the end of this proposed budget's life, the fund balance in the Street and Alley Fund should exceed $2.5 million. This is in addition to the fund balance growth in the major funds as previously described. This allocation of funding is testimony to the governing body's commitment to continue street improvements after completion of the voter-approved street improvement program. Another concern raised in the special audit was the structure and management of the Miami Downtown Redevelopment Authority. The audit was critical of the city's lack of financial oversight in the management of the trust. Since then, the city and the Board of Trustees for the MDRA have agreed to a reorganization of the trust that includes seats for 2 council members on the board and designated the city manager as the ex officio trust manager. This move allowed the city more direct input into the governing of the trust and allowed for inclusion of the day-to-day operations of the Coleman Theater Beautiful and the Coleman Ballroom into the city's organization. This month, a new managing director was selected for the Coleman Complex, and the MDRA is projected to finish the fiscal year 2013-2014 within budget and without need for a year-end infusion of cash. Revenues for fiscal year 2014-2015 are generally projected as flat. In fact, this year's total budget of $77,657,635 is almost $200,000 smaller than last year's budget. Yet operating margins continue to improve, thus the increase in fund balance. The effect represents the product of the governing body's priorities and goals. In fiscal year 2012-2013, the city of Miami plotted a course through what we referred to as the seas of change. Core to these values was the creation of financial capacity. The cornerstone of this effort was the voluntary reduction in workforce created via an early retirement offering and the subsequent reorganization of the Public Works Department into a pooled labor base. These changes continued to produce positive operating margins. This work will continue with the delivery of new solid waste trucks this year, reducing crew size by 67%. Another contributing factor was the decision to contract out our peak workload, eliminating the need to overstaff. 2 paths are open to municipal organizations when attempting to develop financial capacity. The easiest path is to spend less, yet it has an effectiveness ceiling. The primary function of a municipal organization is service delivery. To that end, spending constraints face the law of diminishing returns. The other option is to increase revenue. But with the political culture of Oklahoma, a tax increase is not only unlikely, it is totally unpalatable to the governing body. Therefore, the most logical approach is to increase revenues is to focus on growing the economy. The fiscal year 2014-2015 budget includes up to $250,000 for economic development purposes. 2 counselors and the city manager have been engaged in a dialogue with key members of the business community on economic development. The product of this dialogue is a potential formation of a consolidated effort at business recruitment, retention, and expansion. While still in its infancy, the process does show great promise. However, the City Council remains committed to improving our capacity, and accordingly these resources will be available to effect financial growth, even if this discussion fails to produce a workable product. In conclusion, it is my special pleasure to present the fiscal year 2014-2015 budget as a balanced and progressive plan to meet the goals and objectives of the City of Miami. And Your Honor, staff would request approval of the resolution tonight implementing the proposed fiscal year 2014-2015 budget. I stand available for questions.
So we vote on this, and that means the budget is adopted, correct?
That is correct, sir.
This is a formal adoption of the budget. Okay. Just want to be clear on that for everyone. Any questions or comments?
Jeff, you have the language up there, or you did have it?
Yes, sir.
I move to approve the resolution regarding the City of Miami, Oklahoma budget for the fiscal year 2014-2015 and establishing budget amendment authority.
And the second?
A second.
Roll call?
Johnson?
Aye.
McLean?
Aye.
Weston?
Aye.
Sharbit?
Aye.
Schultz?
Aye. And Jeff, I just want to say to you and all of your staff, we do appreciate the significant work that's been done on the budget. I mean,
Yeah.
it really,
Good job.
the financial health of the city has improved significantly in the last couple of years, and we appreciate everybody's effort.
Yep.
on
Thank you,
this.
sir.
Item number,
Lost my-
let me see.
I should probably send out props to Dr. No. She knows who she is.
Dr. No? Yeah, I
Dr.
think
No.
we all know who that is.
She's hiding.
Item number 5 on a related subject, fiscal year 12-13 audit. Mr. Bill Turner.
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor, thank you. I'm assuming everyone has copies of the
Yes.
audit report. There's about 102 pages. Let's just hit a few high points
Okay.
and talk about that if we can. Basically, our opinions that you look in there, we have no exceptions on the report this year. And again, that's Jeff's responsibility. I mean, we have to fall back on him that things are done correctly. Maybe the things we ought to talk about, like on page 12 and 13 maybe, that's management's discussion and analysis. It's a good report in that it compares the 2 years. You know, we can look at 12 and 13 and see what we've done. That page 12 items are, we have governmental activities and then business activities, and you can see that we're looking at a net position at year end of about 23 million for the government and about 18 million for the business type activities compared to the year before's. We have a big increase in the business type and a decrease in the governmental. Part of that's because we did that swap on the liabilities from one to the other, basically, is what we ran into there. Then over on 13 is the change in net position, and same kind of situation. We wound up with about 9 million as far as revenue for the general fund or the governmental funds, and we spent about 14.9 that year in expenditures. So we wound up with a decrease in net position of about 14,000. On the governmental. On the business side, we have 11.5 million increase on that side. So overall, if you look at it that way, we're down about 3 million for the whole city overall. But still, with some of the changes we made, I think you're still better off than you probably were before.
So there's changes in accounting methodology that.
And those transfers of some of those liabilities out of the system too. You know,
Okay.
we did transfer, like he said earlier, you know, some of that pension money got transferred out, which
Right.
really helped us out for overall picture. It really did. Maybe
Let
over.
me just be honest.
Sure.
The average person listening to you says a $3 million decrease sounds inconsistent with the report we just had from the city manager, but it's really the change in accounting, things like the
Absolutely.
OMR, changed OMRF, and those funds leaving our
Leaving
balance sheet.
our balance sheet.
Okay.
That's exactly
All
right.
just wanna be
That's
clear
that's
on
what
that.
caused our, and you'll see in a minute, we're talking about roughly $9 million leaving the system. So, maybe on 28 and 29, there's some more detail on the proprietary funds. Roughly, what we had there in assets are the same kind of numbers, except they're just more detail. So if somebody wants to look at the report, you know, here it is to see where those differences really are. Probably.
Mr. Turner, if I could.
Yes.
And also, Your Honor, another thing to keep in mind is that the audit is for fiscal year
Right.
12-13.
Different year.
And we're talking about numbers that have an entire budget year after that we're talking about in the current period.
That's right. Maybe another thing looked at is on page 32. There is that change in the pension trust, and like I say, it was 9 million deductions, almost 8 million in change. That we actually changed those numbers and that's the money that got transferred out of there to that retirement system. So, like I said, that did have an effect on our bottom line. Then over.
Mr. Turner,
Yes.
just for full disclosure.
Sure.
Next year, we get the honor and privilege of booking the underfunded portion of the pension, is that correct?
Oh, don't talk to me about that. We have a new pension rule that's out there that basically says, starting in 2015 year, that we're going to be required to show any liabilities that we have on our pension account, whether that's our fault or not. You know, I mean, the situation I ran into, the schools especially are hit with this. They pay whatever they're required to the state, and that money's been borrowed out of the trust fund over years, is what's happened, and so it's underfunded by about 50%. Well, under this new rule, they're going to have to pick up that loss and book it on their financial statements, which is going to throw them into a negative equity situation. Terrible and I'm afraid it's going to cause problems with those guys on bonding. I mean, that's going to be their real issue is, you know, how do you bond when you have, you know, that kind of a negative position? So
But it's just another change in gap.
that's a gap change. That's right.
Okay.
Okay. 45 is a little detail on there concerning our assets. You know, we were talking about some of the changes that we had. You can see there that the governmental accounts roughly added about 2.6 million in, well, $1,511,000 in capital assets, land, construction, those kind of things, and about 413,000 in equipment, and those kind of things were added last year. And then we got rid of roughly $465,000 or so of items that were sold, junked, whatever. So there's our increase there. On the business activity accounts, the public works type things, you can see they probably increased about 640,000, and we wrote off roughly 550,000, either junked or sold. Got those out of the system. So there was some changes, and this, again, that schedule just tells you those kind of changes that you can get a good place to look at. Like I said, there's a lot of information here, but these particular ones I thought kind of deserve some attention. Probably on page 49, there's our long-term debt. Again, a lot of readers want to know that kind of information, what's happened to us. And this particular year, we did pass those revenue bonds, roughly $11,845,000. Part of that was $645,000 was paid down, but we did go from $2.2 million on the balance to down up to a 13.1, of which roughly $1 million is current portion. That's what we'll wind up paying in this year that we're in right now. The business type went from $10,261,000 down to $9,241,000 this particular year. Again, that's not a big issue as far as I'm concerned, because we use that money to buy assets with or did, you know, services for the city, so not a problem.
And again, in the next audit, the 8.8 for Rev Robinson will be factored into that.
That's right.
So
All the public trusts have to be counted. Right.
well, we include that in what we refer to as the business activity.
Okay.
However, that's a sales tax bond. So I'm not sure how Ms. Turner will treat that. It's kind of unique, and we'll have to spend some time with him to describe it, because we've got an interim financing package that will be in existence for five years with a balloon payment.
Okay.
And then at the end of that 5-year period, we're anticipating a refinancing of that debt with all outstanding revenue bonds at that point in time. So we're going to have probably to work through that.
Okay. Yeah. That, you know, again, that information will just be noted in the notes here as to what we plan on doing and how that's going to work out. Bottom line is, it's only going, you know, the current things will wind up showing for the current year, of course, but that's basically it. So the long term is going to be there, but not have any effect on activity. Then on 69, there is the budget that you were alluding to here. Here's our budget for 12-13, and probably the things to point out there, we started off with a beginning budget fund balance of roughly $1.5 million at the beginning of 12-13, and there at the very bottom you can see we wound up with about $1.4 million. So it stayed in that same category. We did collect roughly $9.3 million, and we spent roughly $9.1 million that particular year. So again, and this is really just the governmental budget only that we're talking about. And I assume that's what you approved tonight was just the governmental. So, you know, the same kind of numbers that we're talking about there.
And again, just as a financial policy, Your Honor, we on our governmental funds, we attempt to run it lean with very there's not really a growth in the governmental fund because the governmental funds are technically debtor funds. They require a subsidy from the business funds in order to operate, so there's no sense in providing it with extra money since it doesn't have enough revenues to support itself in any given year.
Well, based on actuals versus what you approved and adjusted throughout the year, we still end up with roughly $500,000 more in collections than we anticipated, and we spent $500,000 less than we anticipated. So we still came out way ahead as far as budget was concerned that particular year.
And on 69, you said it was, the beginning was $1,500,000 and.
Right, at the very top up there.
Right.
It was $1,500,000, and we dropped to $1,400,000 at year end. We spent
Where's that at?
Oh, it's in the third column there.
Oh, okay.
That's the actual numbers there.
Okay.
The rest of those are what we had budgeted initially and what we finished up with, and then actual numbers are showing there. And then the last thing I wanted to probably talk about is the page 99 is our federal expenditures.
And if I may, Bill,
Sure,
just
absolutely.
back on page 69, the bottom number in the far right is the significant number. And that's the, as he was saying a few minutes ago, we ended up with 500,000 more in revenue and 500,000 less in expenses. The two together is $1 million improvement
Right.
position from what we budgeted originally.
For what we thought we were going to do with the budget. Exactly right. Mhm.
Go ahead, Bill.
Okay. Like I say, the other items on page 99, there's our federal program monies. And really what this tells you, all the different programs we received roughly $649,000 in that particular year, although the award amounts were a lot more, but they were spread over a period of time. But that particular year was $649. That's what we have to look at from an audit position. Right now, to qualify you for a single audit, which just says we're going to do additional work, 500,000 is the magic number. If we receive more than 500,000, or rephrase it, if we expend more than 500,000 of our federal program monies, then we become a single audit. And like I say, we have to, as an auditor, we have to do other things. They're going to change that rule. Right now, it's scheduled for 2015 to be 750,000. So if we stay roughly in this kind of a figure, but preferably you'd like to have $2 or $3 million here in federal program monies if you can get it. But if we drop below that 750 number, then this schedule will basically go away. It won't be in here any longer. So, and again, less work for us to do too. So that's even better. So. Like I said, fast run through, but I tried to just hit, I thought the items that, everybody want to know about. And if there's any questions, I'll be glad to answer anything else that everybody's got.
So I think the key thing on page 100, item number 1, the auditor's report expresses an unqualified opinion on the basic financial statements of the city of Miami, which is a good thing.
That's a good thing. Unqualified is our best opinion. That says
Right.
we have no errors. And that's where we want to be. That's exactly the case. Nearly, again, back, I talked about schools. Nearly all of our schools that fall under statutory regulations, I mean, they have their own format they're supposed to use. If they do that, then they have a qualified opinion. And all of a sudden, that causes other problems with their reports. But luckily, we don't have to fall under that as far. All my cities and towns are like you guys. We try to get them to an unqualified opinion. Yep. Yeah, those 9 items there is just something. If you're a single audit, those 9 items have to be addressed in the report.
And I'd say we're probably more caught up than we have been in a long time.
More than we have been in a long time. Yeah.
And probably this year we'll get basically on par.
I'm hoping that this year, that we can get the Crawford firm in to do their thing sooner and have everything finished up by December 31. That's our goal, is that the state wants us to be done within 180 days. We want to be done within 180 days. So hopefully that's where we're going.
Great. Any questions or comments?
No, sir. Looks good.
Thank you, Bill.
Okay, thank you guys.
We are going to take a quick 5-minute break, and then we're going to move on to the remaining items. We're back, and we are on item 6, which is the consent agenda. Staff is recommending items 7 through 14 for the consent agenda. Is there any questions on any of the items? Any of them that you'd like to see pulled out? If not, I would entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion.
And a second, please.
Second.
Roll call.
McLean,
Aye.
Weston,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Sharbit,
Aye.
Schultz.
Aye. Thank you. Item 15, approve Miami municipal pool rate increase effective with the 2014 season as recommended by the Parks Board. Mr. Tallman.
Hello, how are you?
Good.
As today, as you can see, the Parks Board wanted us to come to you guys to increase the rates for the pool, just to help increase, cover the cost for our chemicals, employees, everything else
Okay.
that we have down there. Currently, right now, it's at $2 for a child and $3 for an adult. When we called around other places, Joplin we called, Ship Decker, they're wanting $4 for a child, $5 for an adult. Cunningham, they were wanting 3 and 4. Grove is 4 for all. Now Pittsburgh was $3.25 and $4.25. What we're wanting to do is bring it up just $1, bring it up to $3 and $4. $3 for a child, $4 an adult. Then we're also wanting to increase on that for the season passes. Right now we're currently at $50 and $60. We're wanting to bring that up $10 to $60 and $70. For the family members, it's $85 and $110, and we're wanting to raise that to $100 and $125, so which would be $15. On pool passes and daycare passes, we're wanting $125 and $175. We're wanting to bring it up to $245 and $295, so it'll be $20 on it. That's what we're wanting to increase. So we're still going to be under other pools around us. I mean, everyone's still going to be a little bit above us, so which is good. I mean, helps bring people to the city, to the pool. But like I said, we're wanting to increase a little bit.
Have you guys, based on attendance last year or some number, done an estimate of what the additional revenues would be?
No, I did not. So, but I do know we had, as far as employees, we had 48 pool employees and 17 MSRP, which 17, it's kind of hard to break that up because some of our MSRP people are also lifeguards. So during the day they are for the MSRP, but then after that's done, they come over and help lifeguard.
And MSRP is the Miami Summer Rec Program.
Yes.
And do we operate that in conjunction with anybody? I mean, I know
That's
in the
just
past
us.
we've partnered with the college sometimes.
Well, the
and-
college helps for as far as for they feed them for us.
Okay.
And then, but I mean, they do that for free for us. But but for the rest of the cost, it's just us. We take out the rest of the cost on that.
There's been discussion, you may recall, in the past, Mayor, about whether or not the city would be partnering with the Boys and Girls Club. I remember that being brought up, but I've not heard anything about it since those discussions.
Okay. I think they were trying to, are they in the facility now, their new facility, and we're still working on that?
They're still working on it as far as I know.
That's what I thought, okay. I know at the time we thought it would be a good opportunity for us and for them.
Yeah.
If we could
Which would be
somehow
good for
partner
them.
with them on that.
Because I mean, they'll have the kids there at the park, so it would be a good place for them.
Do you know the attendance last year? Do you remember that? I know at one time we saw attendance numbers.
Yes, and I don't have that on me.
Can you guesstimate it?
I was thinking it was roughly, I would say it was, I was thinking it was like 30,000. Because I know it was way above our population rate. I was wanting to say around 31,000.
So if we're increasing $1 per person.
Per person.
Not counting the parties and
Right.
all that stuff, it would be a revenue increase of 30,000 roughly.
30,000.
And so we can probably assume around 35,000
Yes.
with everything else factored in.
Right. I was thinking, I'm almost positive it was around 31,000 is what we had there last year.
That sounds kind of like what I remember. And Jeff, do you know what the deficit for the pool operation was last year?
No, sir, but the deficit is almost non-existent for a municipal pool. I mean, I've had the honor and privilege of managing other municipal pools that required a massive subsidy, but it's a remarkable facility in the sense that it pretty much carries its weight, especially when you consider, what, 48 lifeguards this year?
Yeah, 48.
I mean, that's almost a large enough crew to run some small cities, so we're not concerned about that. I mean, this would help a little bit. The challenge that we're going to face in the future is just like everything else. It was built in the 20s, and if something can't go on forever, it has to come to an end. So at some point in time, you're going to have to visit some of those capital investments in the facilities, but that's a discussion for another day.
Okay. Any other questions for James?
Jeff, could you go back a couple of slides for me? You will. One more, right there. Do we have a lot of season pass holders?
Actually, we do. I mean, we have more than what people would think. Our biggest deal is our daycare. Daycare, they buy them all the time. But we have a lot of members from one. Our biggest is 1 to 4 members, but we have a few that are 5 to 8 family member passes. In fact, I had a gentleman call me today that had he had 6 kids. It was him and his 6 kids. And he was called and wanted to know about pool passes today. So.
Are you saying daycares by the family?
Daycare? No, they actually have their own daycare passes. Daycare does.
That's on can you go to the next slide?
Yeah, it's right there.
So that's the daycare slide.
And we actually have a lot of them. In fact, Leonard Learning called yesterday, wanting to know about them. Leonard Learning Center. So.
And these are all recommendations. The Parks Board has reviewed all of these
Board.
fees, and these are their recommendations.
Yes.
Say for instance, daycare passes, they can have up to 10 each day. The pool's
Yes.
open.
Pool's open.
And it's
Pretty good deal.
It is a good deal.
Very good.
Any other questions? Do we have a motion?
Motion to approve.
And a second?
I'll second.
Roll call, please.
Sharbit,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Weston,
Aye.
McLean,
Aye.
Schultz.
Aye.
Thank you.
Item 16, approve interlocal agreement with Ottawa County Board of Commissioners for projects of mutual benefit. Tyler?
Yes, sir. Tonight before you is is to approve for the mutual benefit. We've talked to the county, and they're happy to help us with a lot of different projects we have. So by doing this, they will be able to help us. They passed it last Monday at their board, so we're just presenting it to you guys tonight for your board. For example, they're going to help us on the A and C Street culverts. If you know A Street Northeast, it is currently shut down because the culvert has rusted out and collapsed. So Mr. Earls has been kind enough. He has actually told me to text him after this meeting if it's approved so they can start tomorrow. But he's been kind enough to come in and fix that for us. So we have concrete culverts that we're moving in to replace those and get the road back open.
We're also talking with them about the bridge.
Yes, sir. They're going to help us on the Rockdale Bridge, and we've also talked to them about if we do the truck route someday, that they would maybe have all 3 commissioners help us on the truck route. We thought it'd be kind of fun to have an excavator from the city and an excavator from the county side by side and do a little competition on who could dig faster.
Questions? I think this is a big step forward for us. I know that, not that we haven't partnered with the county in the past on things on kind of an intermittent basis, but Commissioner Earls and Ben Loring met with city representatives a few months ago and wanted to kind of basically ask, what else can we do? How can we work together? And we appreciate that. So I would entertain a motion.
Motion to approve, Mayor.
And a second.
Second.
Roll call.
Johnson,
Aye.
Weston,
Aye.
McLean,
Aye.
Sharbit,
Aye.
Schultz.
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Tyler.
Tyler.
Item 17, approved template memorandum of understanding to be distributed to Ottawa County communities who may wish to participate. David?
This arose after the recent tornadoes. I had been approached by Glenda Longan and others about the possibility of coming up with a template agreement, something that provides an approved starting point to have the ability to share resources with other communities who are in a particular need at the time, typically a crisis. I went online. You know, we talk about not reinventing the wheel. I went online, found out there were a couple of proposed variations on the Oklahoma Office of Emergency Management website. I basically combined what I thought were all of the features of both of those proposed documents. You have two sections in the agreement. Basically, one talks about fire protection services and the other really deals with general governmental services. I forwarded these to give an opportunity for comment. I don't know if the fire chief may have a comment at this time or not, but you may wonder why I don't discuss law enforcement assistance in this document, and that's because that's an area already regulated by state statute. So there's no need to enter into agreements in that regard. In essence, any peace officer can request assistance from any other peace officer in the state, and the law already provides for that. If you approve it, generally it would simply become an approved document that any other municipality or public agency could enter into with the city of Miami. However, on each such occasion, that completed document would have to be brought back before the city council for approval. So again, all I'm asking you to do is to approve the template so that when we enter into discussions with other communities, we have something to show them.
And this is, this process is approved by the state of Oklahoma.
Yes, there's one. In fact, it's one of the state statutes cited in the previous agreement prepared by Mr. Loring with the District Attorney's Office, and that's 74 OS Section 1008, which very simply permits local governmental units to contract with one another to provide aid to one another. It does not require the formalities of a formal Interlocal Cooperation Act agreement, although it's included within that chapter of the state statutes. So there's no need, for example, to send it to the Attorney General or any other supervising authority. You're simply authorized by state statute to enter into these agreements with other municipalities, counties, political subdivisions.
And when you say by contract, does that imply that there would be compensation or potentially compensation
Yes,
depending
sir.
on the nature of the agreement?
Yes, sir. You'll notice a provision, for example, that says if, I'll take this perspective. Let's say the city of Miami dispatched resources to help another town in Ottawa County after a flood or tornado or other natural disaster. If that municipality received federal assistance or compensation, the agreement provides that the city of Miami would be compensated for our contribution according to the same proportion that that municipality itself was compensated by the federal government or state government. You know, the other thing is we want to manage liabilities, and I wanted to address command and control issues. The way I drafted the document, and there's flexibility here, but the way I drafted this proposal would be that our folks, if responding to another municipality, would remain under the command of their City of Miami supervisor, but that City of Miami supervisor would immediately liaison with some member in that community to find out what we could do to help, and vice versa.
Don't they have an instant control officer that is in charge of man?
That's something we would want to make sure and identify whenever we bring agreements to you as a council to consider in the future, because occasionally, you know, a community might find it wished it had designated such an individual in advance. And we would want to make sure that that had occurred before an agreement was reached with that particular community, that we knew who we were going to report to coordinate efforts.
Jeff, do you have anything to add?
No, Your Honor, but it might be helpful for David to explain why we just can't go do it.
Okay.
Rather than having to have the agreement.
Well, we're generally only covered by this in terms of liability and immunity and tort immunity within the scope of our conduct as the City of Miami. And we run the risk when we leave the community and we go into another community or another jurisdiction of having basically standing as private citizens or not being cloaked in our official governmental capacity. And so by entering into these contracts under state law, we preserve the official nature of our conduct, as well as we enjoy our immunities and we have some liability protection.
So we want to help our neighbors. We just want to make sure that we're afforded all of the normal protections that we would be afforded were we doing those same things here in the community.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Any other questions? Do we have a motion?
I move to approve the template memorandum of understanding to be distributed to Ottawa County communities who may wish to participate.
And a second?
Second.
Roll call?
McLean,
Aye.
Weston,
Aye.
Sharbit,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Schultz.
Aye. Thank you. Item number 18, approve Miami Community Facility Authority indebtedness for purchase of scoreboard. This is the same item that we talked about in the SUA meeting. David, you have reviewed the documents and you're satisfied that the terms reflect what we discussed previously,
Yes, Mayor.
and that there is no exposure created by the execution of this document, no exposure created for the city or the SUA.
Correct.
Any other questions for David?
Motion to approve, Mayor.
And second?
Second.
Roll call?
Johnson,
Aye.
McLean,
Aye.
Sharbit,
Aye.
Weston,
Aye.
Schultz.
Aye. Item number 19, approve ordinance pertaining to the sale, possession, and residential use and public display of fireworks, providing a penalty and establishing an effective date. David?
What I've drafted is a ordinance at the direction of Councilmember Neil Johnson, but I would like to say I enjoyed drafting it. This is a revision of a document that I initially prepared 5 years ago. It would essentially, with reasonable restrictions, legalize the retail sale of consumer fireworks on certain dates, and the date range is the same date range authorized by state statute. With regard to the retail sale of fireworks, there would be an annual application required. That annual application would call for a $750 application fee, but you'll find in the proposed ordinance discretion with the city manager, if you so approve, to waive that fee when dealing with nonprofit fundraising type organizations. I want to make sure you understand that is provided in the document in case you have thoughts one way or the other. The proposed ordinance would also authorize and actually provide a legal basis for public display of what are called, in fact, display fireworks, and these are the big fireworks. The city has in the past discharged them as a sort of a governmental function, but I wanted to offer you the opportunity to clarify that public displays could in fact be lawful. And there are specific provisions regarding to which codes apply and identifying the role of the city manager and the Miami Fire Department in making sure that those federal, state, and local provisions are complied with. And finally, the proposed ordinance would authorize private citizens to discharge consumer fireworks within the city of Miami on certain days and times. I will tell you that I had to do a certain amount of guessing. I provided in this proposed document that that private citizens could discharge fireworks on the same dates that the state allows the retail sale of fireworks. With regard to the times I described, and there's certainly room for revision, I went simply with the general principle that folks are probably more tolerant of fireworks later into the night on the day of the holiday in question, and probably less tolerant on days leading up to that holiday or following that holiday. And that certainly could be revised. Those hours that I've assigned are flexible and completely subject to your discretion at this time. I've also built in what I believe to be a pretty important safety feature, which allows fireworks, particularly consumer fireworks, that are being used unsafely or in violation of this ordinance could be seized as contraband by the police department or the Miami Fire Department. And then finally, the document provides that the city and ostensibly the chief of the Miami Fire Department could simply declare that it was too dry and too dangerous, sort of the equivalent of a, you know,
Burn
black
ban.
flag, burn ban type situation, and cancel the whole thing. You know, could simply declare that nope, we're not shooting them today or tomorrow or this week because it's just not safe because of the fire hazard. Now there are a lot more things in the document. I did forward it about a week or so ago to the police chief, the fire chief, city management, the municipal judge, the city prosecutor, and a few others to see if they saw anything in the document that they'd like to see changed or done differently. And I haven't heard any such feedback. The only feedback I had specifically that I recall came today from Councilman Johnson, who asked me to consider making a one-word change from the version that was submitted in your Dropbox, and that was simply to clarify that the application for retail sale was an annual permit, not a one-time permit. And so in subparagraph E, which begins with retail sale, in the first sentence where it says adult persons may apply for a permit to possess, display for sale, etc., we added in our suggestion the word annual so that it would read for an annual permit.
So if someone they would purchase a permit, it would apply for, I guess in this case, 365 days, so it would include the 4th of July as well as New Year's.
Yes, sir. Yes.
In succession.
They would buy a one-year permit. And of course there are requirements, numerous other requirements in the document, and I made extensive reference to not only the ordinances in existence in other larger communities, but also literally to national fire codes and other standards to make sure that they were incorporated.
The one concern that I had, David, and I was interested to hear that you said these dates were the same as the dates for the state. It just seemed to me that June 15 and December 15 until July 4th and January 1 was quite a long time.
July 6th, in fact.
Yeah, July 6th. So you're looking at 3 weeks or more in the case of the 4th of July.
Yes, sir.
And I don't have a problem with the possession part, but the discharge part, you know, if we're giving people a legal right starting June 15th to shoot all fireworks, seems a little bit excessive to me. I don't necessarily, I don't have a number in mind. I would like for us to discuss that and get other council members' thoughts. That's the only thing in the ordinance that I had a concern about.
I would also like to point out that I did exclude from the definition of fireworks the big black powder signal cannon used at any A&M college. And again, that's not on the mayor's point, but I forgot to mention that earlier. As far as the dates and the times for discharge of consumer fireworks, it's completely, as a matter of law, it's completely discretionary with the council.
Mayor, I kind of agree with you a little bit on the time frame. I think that's a little excessive thinking about it. After you brought that up, I agree with you. I think 3 weeks is probably a little too much.
You could June 25th instead of 15th. That would.
I think typically they start a couple of weeks ahead of time selling, and that would afford people enough time to make their purchase and plan a little bit. I'm comfortable with the 25th.
Yeah.
Chrissy, do you have any?
No, I think 2 weeks is excessive, but is that 2 weeks? About 2 weeks?
June 25th, 30 days in June. It's
Yeah.
about 2 weeks.
That's just for the.
Well, it's a little less than 2 weeks. It's about 9 or 10
From June
days.
25th to July 6th would be, what, 12 days still?
Yes, sir.
Most people are going to be shooting on July 4th. Occasionally, if the 4th is on a Friday or something, you're going to have people go into the weekend, probably.
And similarly, you might want to say instead of December 15th, December 25th, Christmas Day, or later. Just to,
December 15th.
Seems
Thoughts
like-
on this end?
I think 2 weeks is enough time.
So,
12 or 14 days is,
Yeah.
to me, either one of them, I think.
We'll see how many complaints
I-
we get.
We're gonna get them anyway.
Your Honor, if I may,
What's going on now?
this is one of those opportunities where I get to inform you that since I've done this in other places and have done this for a great number of years, I would like to just point out that you may very well get some input from the public after you've taken action on this. Two of the areas that you may have comments from are those owners of pets who find this particular time of year to be traumatizing.
Leave my mom.
And
I'm with your mom. I have one
given
of those.
the fact that during Christmas you have a lot of family gatherings and so forth, some folks are a little bit more concerned with peace and goodwill, for lack of a better term. So my suggestion to you would be for you possibly to consider to do this in the form of a reading. Read this ordinance tonight, allow the press to run coverage on it, allow our constituents at home to watch it, and then take it back up at your next meeting for ratification, since the date would clearly be within the window for this upcoming year. And just as an abundance of caution, provide you with some opportunities to have some input from the public in the event that they have some serious concerns about the content therein.
When is our first meeting in June?
Third.
The 3rd? So yeah, that's certainly plenty of time.
One thing you
And-
might, I'm sorry, Mayor.
I was just gonna say, as long as you attach an emergency clause to it, then
Right.
you're not.
Well, and again, one way of tightening it up, of course, would be to limit, if you're going to allow New Year's fireworks, you might simply want to allow them on the night of the 31st, and that's it.
Yeah, that's
That's
true
kind of
too.
what I was thinking on the, I can see the longer extended time during the 4th of July summer time, but maybe not so much in the,
The 31st, the 1st.
So David, would you please redraft that to reflect the annual? And then, for now, let's go with June 25, just for the next version, and we'll anticipate some feedback on that. And then let's go with December 30 through January 1. And again, I'm only adding that extra day because depending on if it hits on a weekend and where it
Mhm.
falls,
Yeah,
sometimes
right.
people
Yeah.
will wanna do that. And at the next meeting, we can
Okay,
review
so-
that and change it if we want to, but let's use that as working for our next draft.
And one of the things that I'd ask you to consider is that I think fireworks have been pretty widely discharged in the community, and I would simply suggest that because of the position that puts the police department in, either enforce the existing law or go with something different, and that's just a thought. So I'll do as you instructed me, Mr. Mayor. I've already made the notes on my copy, and I'll have it before you.
Can we ask,
thank you.
can we ask Chris to come up? Can you give us some light on this as far as your experience and?
Surprise,
I ain't put you-
surprise,
I ain't put you on the
surprise.
spot.
I'm prepared, of course. I can only speak since 2001, because I've worked evenings since 2001. I would say from July 1 to about July 5th or 6th, we average dozens of calls. And at the 3rd, 4th, and 5th, usually so many we can't respond to all of them. New Year's, typically none, just because it's so cold. But, New Year's Eve is midnight, and I know being a pet owner at midnight, I'd be upset as well. So, but as far as 4th of July, I mean, it's dozens of calls. I'd say 50 a shift. So, but that's just my experience since 2001.
Well, I think David's point is that, if we legalize this, up to now it's been illegal, but that during those times when it continues to be illegal, that we make an effort to enforce it more so. And hopefully, by creating this window, people will be more compliant, but we'll see.
Well, as you know, I mean, it's citizen complaint versus what we observe ourselves. Typically, I'd say probably 90% is a citizen complaint, where the officer doesn't observe the offense.
Right.
So then you become the citizen that has to file a report, and typically they don't want to do that just because it's usually a neighborhood.
We see very few citations actually
Very few.
filed. very, very few citations filed.
And I have no problem if anybody on the council wants to tighten up that June date some more based on what Chris has said, but,
I'm recommending that you cut off the other than on July 4th itself. My recommendation is that you consider, basically the sun goes down at about 9 that time of year, 8:30 or 9. Keep it mostly within the daylight hours and not let people shoot them off late at night except on July 4th.
Typically on the 4th, we start the fireworks display over 10:30. It goes on to midnight, 12:30, 1 o'clock. I mean, just because people leave the park, go home,
right.
they continue their celebrations.
Mm-hmm.
So what you're thinking is maybe July 1st through the 6th or 5th or something like that?
I would love, I mean, if you're gonna legalize it, July 1st through the 5th would be something I would, as a citizen and an employee, would I like to see.
Won't this create a bunch of small businesses selling fireworks now, and that would, our retail sales would
Actually,
benefit from that?
maybe, sir. Under current state law, fireworks wholesalers can sell to the public at retail 365 days a year. Direct retail sales
Thank you, Chris.
by retailers are limited by state law to the window that I described. And typically, you'll also see I've built a requirement into the ordinance that fireworks stands have to be on commercially zoned property and on an arterial street.
But I think, to Doug's point, will they generate sales tax?
Yes.
Which currently goes to somebody in Missouri, probably.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. The application process for retail sales requires that one of the things they attach to their application is their Oklahoma sales tax permit.
And so, Joe, I have no problem with changing the date to July 1, if that's the consensus of the council, or
Yeah,
we'll
I
just
have
start
no
with that
problem
as a
with that
draft.
either.
Christie?
Yeah.
Okay.
And
so-
it's awful dry. I included New Year's Eve, but a couple of things come to mind as a long-term resident. It's usually incredibly dry and easy to start fires over New Year's. It doesn't take much of anything to hit the ground for the grass to catch on fire.
What about age limit? I mean,
I've
if
put
it's a
some-
certain age limit, and they need to have parents out there with them, or they?
Is it 12 or 13 that you have in there, David?
12. I took a stab at what you might be interested in, and I simply said that they can't
forgot.
possess and discharge them under the age of 12 unless they have an adult responsibility.
85.
I remember that now.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll go with July 1 through July 6
Yes, sir.
in the next draft, and December 30 through January 2, is that what we
I
said?
think that's what you said.
Chief, have anything to say?
Ronnie? Are you okay with the New Year's time?
I am.
Okay.
Okay, so we're going to take no action tonight.
Yes, sir.
And we'll expect to see this back in revised form on June 3rd.
Yes, sir.
Okay. That means item 20, we will also take no action on tonight, which was the clause related to item 19. Excuse me, item 21, proposal from Don Brazil and Associates to form a shippers association. Don't see Mr. Brazil here. Jeff, are you taking the lead on that?
Yes, sir, I am. Mr. Brazil is in Bainbridge Island, Washington, so I wouldn't anticipated that he would be in here tonight. Mr. Brazil, as you know, is the consultant who assisted us in negotiations with the Burlington Northern Santa Fe Railroad to acquire the branch line that you authorized at your last meeting for Thompson Hines to prepare the legal work on. Mr. Brazil has proffered a proposal to the city to assist in the formation of a shipper association and also to provide you some continuing support during the period of this acquisition. Namely, he's offered to approach the Class 1 railroad in an attempt to have them help financially with the rehab of the line, and then also to work on the actual budget. But the cornerstone of his proposal is the formation of a shippers association. And just quite briefly, although I have never known Mr. Brazil to find anything brief, but I'll attempt to kind of distill this. But a shipper association generally are nonprofit transportation membership cooperatives which arrange for the domestic or international shipment of a member's cargo. Associations will contract for the physical movement of cargo with motor carriers, railroad, ocean carriers, air carriers, and others. The ability to aggregate cargo and ship the collective membership cargo at favorable volume rates is the key to the existence of a modern-day shippers association. Associations have the flexibility and the expertise to provide a number of transportation logistics services. Shipper associations enjoyed a favored position under transportation laws, and historically associations have been exempted from regulation in the domestic and international transportation markets. I'm not going to get into any great detail on this, but there's basically a lot of flexibility into it. We're not limited to any particular size. It's an entity that could be created for multi-county areas. It's not limited to the mode of transportation, although it's usually limited to instances where you're dealing with a carrier that has the common carrier obligation. Since we are creating this opportunity for two of our local businesses to ship product directly from their factories to their customers and also from their suppliers to the customers, the minimum number of participants in the Shipper Association is 2. So there's 2 there, there's 2. So you could look at a minimum of providing that opportunity. Also allows them to have opportunities to discuss amongst themselves shipping opportunities and shipping rates. But again, you're not limited to just rail situations. You could have shippers join the association that want to take advantage of the same situation when they're dealing with motor freight. And you're not limited to the city of Miami. You could offer membership to entities inside Ottawa County or even northeastern Oklahoma. Mr. Brazil's proposal is for a amount not to exceed $35,000 plus expenses. And other than that, you've had the information disseminated to you. I wanted to make sure that I was here to answer any questions you have tonight. If you want to bring this back up at your meeting on June 3rd for further consideration, that's fine. One of the good benefits of this would be that you would have an individual who is helping you negotiate with the railroads. Just to refresh your memories, Mr. Brazil was a former special assistant to Matt Rose, who is the chairman of the Burlington Northern Santa Fe Railroad, and has provided us great deal of assistance in this process of getting the Burlington Northern to donate the line to the city of Miami.
So, assuming we do this and we're a year into it, who's responsible for whatever administration, all those sorts of things?
They become a standalone entity. They will have to appoint an administrator. The administrator cannot be a shipper, so there has to be some separation from the administrator and the shippers. I know that Judy, I just drew a total blank. Snodderly, thank you. Executive Director of Maids has indicated that she would be interested in serving in that capacity as administrator. But no, it's a standalone. We don't really have anything other than this. Is just consider this would be seed capital that we would throw at formation of the Shippers Association. But our primary benefit is the fact that we may be able to get some financial assistance in the upgrade of the rail line. So it's an all-encompassing proposal from Mr. Brazil.
Have you had any conversations with the two businesses in question about this as of yet?
No, we have not had a chance, Your Honor.
Is there any downside aside from the cost?
Other than the cost, there's no downside for the city because we wouldn't be involved in it. Again, you're just providing seed capital. Whether or not there's any disadvantages to the businesses, I'm not really qualified to provide you with that answer. I've never formed one myself. So.
But the fee's $35,000 per.
No, sir, the fee would be $35,000 to the city, who would be hiring the consultant to assist any business that wanted to join the Shippers Association. Now, whether there's ongoing fees, I would assume that would be the responsibility of the shippers from that point forward. We would just simply be offering this as an incentive to our local customers, as an inducement to get them to use the rail system.
And the rail,
You use the term shipper, but is it inbound and outbound?
Yes,
this
it could,
association?
yeah, it could be whatever the wherever the movement is. Inbound freight usually is borne by that shipper. For example, I think the plastic that comes to the two businesses that we're acquiring the line for, I think that's part of their purchase price and the material if the shipping is rolled up into that. But certainly the outbound would be, if there was outbound. But you certainly could use it. I mean, there are other businesses in the community that do a lot of freight
Right, and that's what I was
by
thinking.
truck that could.
If there's an inbound component also, there's other businesses that could benefit from
Right.
it potentially.
And we certainly could bring Mr. Brazil out to put on some type of a informational presentation to potential shippers. Maids could sponsor that, and he could discuss it in more detail. Mr. Brazil, just as a background, was a consultant who worked on the Alameda corridor, which is the separation of the rail corridor from the ports of Los Angeles, Long Beach, under the interstates through all of the surrounding communities. So he's former managing director of a very large logistics firm in the Pacific Northwest, is a former member of the West Coast Coalition, which is a association of shipping interests on the West Coast.
And other than, which is significant, other than the benefits that it might provide to local businesses, there may be an opportunity for us to access some funding that would help with the rehab.
Well, it's not necessarily funding. I think he's looking for in-kind contributions from Berlin Northern Santa Fe. I mean, I don't know if you've drove around our main line, but you'll see laying around the main line here, they have a lot of ribbon rails just laying around. Mm-hmm. Depending on whether or not that rail is structurally sound, he might be able to get a donation of that type of material that would enable our contractor to save some cost in rehabbing the line. I mean, there's three basic components to a rail line. There's the rail, there's the tie, and there's the ballast. And naturally, ancillary objects that go along with that: frogs, tie or spikes, anything that's involved in the mechanical operation of the switch, and so on and so forth. But primarily, the most expensive component is the rail because it's rather substantial steel, and steel is a high value at present. So.
Okay, so I think we should all give this a lot of thought between now and the next meeting. And so we'll see this on June 3rd again. Item number 22, other new business, if any, which has arisen. Any new business?
No new business, Your Honor.
Okay. Item 23, staff reports. Written reports are in your packet if available, and staff is present for questions. Does anybody have any questions for staff? Item 24, mayor and council community announcements. Anybody have any announcements?
No, I just want to thank David for his work on this ordinance. He done a lot of work on it, and I know there's some cobwebs on it, but he done a lot of work on it. I want to thank you for it.
Yes, sir.
And I just want to remind everyone, I know we mentioned this in the SUA meeting, but Representative Glenn is retiring after many, many years of various forms of community service. Served as state representative for 10 years, served on the city commission at one time, served in the Air Force, served as a deputy sheriff, and there will be a reception honoring him on June 2nd at NEO Student Union Building. So any members of the public that want to turn out and express their appreciation to Larry, please come on June 2nd at 2 p.m. Any other announcements? There being none, future agenda planning, anything for future agenda planning? There being none, we currently have a meeting scheduled for next Tuesday, a workshop. And everybody's aware of that. Right now it is still scheduled. I have a couple of items that we may want to discuss. If you have any other suggestions, let me know and I'll get with Jeff tomorrow and go over those with him and see if we need to have that meeting or not. Item 27, adjournment. We have a motion to adjourn
I make a motion to adjourn.
and a second.
Second.
Roll call.
McLean,